My name is Kayla Wilcox, and I was 30 years old when I realized the life I'd been protecting, like glass, had already been cracked for months, maybe years. But if you'd asked me back then, before everything detonated, I would have smiled and told you we were fine. Not perfect, nobody's perfect, but fine. The kind of fine people say when they've invested too much in a story to admit the ending might be ugly. I met my husband Ethan in the most humiliating way imaginable. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky looks washed out and the air smells like car exhaust and burnt toast. I was rushing into a coffee shop with my laptop bag cutting into my shoulder, rehearsing a client pitch in my head like a prayer. I was already late, already sweating, already one sharp breath away from snapping at a stranger. And then, boom! A full grande latte surged forward like a tidal wave and soaked the front of my blouse. Hot, sticky, bitter. My hands jerked up in reflex, and I just stood there, stunned, while the coffee dripped down my stomach and onto my skirt. The guy holding the empty cup went white. He was tall, messy-haired, wide-eyed, like he couldn't believe his own body had betrayed him. "Oh my God," he blurted. "I'm so sorry. I swear I wasn't aiming for you. Not that that makes it better. I mean," he sounded so panicked, so genuinely horrified. It hit me like a joke I didn't know I needed. I laughed. Not the polite little laugh people do when they're furious and trying not to show it. I laughed like something inside me finally unclenched. The kind of laugh that makes your eyes water and your chest hurt. Ethan blinked at me like I was a miracle. "You're laughing?" "I hate this blouse," I told him, still laughing. "My mom bought it. She said it made me look responsible. This is the universe agreeing with me." His shoulders dropped, relief washing over him. "Okay, good. Because I was about to offer you my shirt, and I'm not sure that would help." We ended up sitting down together, my blouse still damp and my meeting forgotten. We talked for 2 hours. 2 hours turned into 3. I missed the pitch, got a voicemail from my boss that could have stripped paint off a wall, and I didn't even care. Ethan told me he'd been trying to figure out his life. He worked a job he didn't love, talked about dreams like they were half-finished paintings, launching his own brand, doing something creative, building something that felt like his. He had this way of describing ambition that made it sound romantic, like a movie montage where everything works out in the end. I told him I was a software engineer. My days were code and logic and deadlines. My brain lived in checklists and problem solving. Meeting someone like Ethan, someone who spoke in feelings and possibilities, felt like walking into a room with warmer light. Opposites attract, right? We dated for a year. Ethan was funny, spontaneous, and charismatic in a way that made ordinary life feel like an adventure. Grocery shopping became a game. Laundry became a competition. One time, he built a sock puppet and gave it a dramatic monologue about the tragedy of losing its twin in the dryer. My friend said I was whipped. I didn't deny it. I didn't care. He proposed at the same coffee shop where we met. He rented it out for the evening. String lights everywhere, candles on the tables, music low and soft like it was afraid to interrupt. When he got down on one knee, his hands were shaking. His voice cracked when he said my name. I said yes before he finished the sentence. The first couple of years of marriage were solid, comfortable, warm. I was making good money at a tech startup. Steady promotions, bigger projects, more responsibility. We bought a house in a nice neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, just a 3-bedroom with a yard and a porch swing Ethan insisted we needed because porch swings are where people fall in love again. Ethan threw himself into his dream. That's what we called it, the dream. At first, it felt inspiring. He took classes, went to workshops, read books that had titles like Reinvent Your Life Before Breakfast. He'd talk about networking, about building his brand, about opportunities that were just around the corner. I supported him, fully, financially, emotionally. I paid for everything: mortgage, groceries, utilities, insurance, the constant stream of little expenses that keep a life running. Ethan contributed in other ways. He kept the house in order, cooked dinner, handled errands. We said it was a fair trade, and in the beginning, it honestly felt that way. But around year 3, the dream started stalling. Not crashing, not collapsing, just stalling. Like a car engine you keep trying to start, hoping the next turn of the key will magically fix it. Ethan would come home from meetings talking about how someone didn't see his potential, how the timing was wrong, how the market wasn't ready. There was always a reason, always someone else in the way, always the promise that the next thing would be the breakthrough. And I believed him, because loving someone makes you generous with hope. I'd come home after 12 hours of debugging code, eyes burning from screens, brain buzzing with stress, and Ethan would be on the couch scrolling his phone. But dinner would be ready. The house would be clean enough. He'd smile and ask about my day like we were still in sync. So I told myself the engine was just warming up. By year 4, our life settled into a routine. And routines are dangerous because they don't look like problems. They look like stability. I got promoted to lead developer. My income jumped. Salary, bonuses, stock options. Suddenly, we were comfortable in a way that made me exhale for the first time in years. I was bringing in around $200,000 a year between everything, and I thought, now we can breathe. Now the pressure will ease. Instead, Ethan started spending more. New clothes, expensive grooming, a gym membership he actually used, haircuts that took longer and cost more. He said he needed to look the part for the kind of circles he was trying to move in. It made sense. In that way, lies always do when you want them to. His schedule shifted too. He started leaving in the evenings, networking events, late meetings, workshops. He'd be gone from around 6:30 to 10 in class, sometimes later. I was usually working late anyway, or zoning out with mindless TV, so it didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like parallel lives, together, but not really together. Our intimacy faded quietly, like a lamp dimming one click at a time until you forget what full light looked like. Once a month turned into once every 2 months. Then, not at all. Every time I tried to bring it up, Ethan had an excuse. Stress. Tired. Not in the mood. Feeling disconnected. I heard the word disconnected so many times it started to feel like my fault. Then he got secretive with his phone. He took it everywhere, even into the bathroom, even to the shower, even when he walked to the mailbox. He put a passcode on it when he'd never used one before. He angled the screen away when he texted. The classic signs. The flashing red lights. I ignored them. When I finally asked, gently, he smiled like I was silly. Spam calls, he said. And I've got stuff I'm working on. Business things. I just want to keep it secure. I bought the lie like an idiot buys a timeshare, because admitting the truth would have meant admitting how little I actually knew about my own marriage. Around this time, our neighbor Lena moved in. Mid-30s, sharp smile, always outside, always perfectly put together, like she was ready for a photo. Her husband, Mark, seemed polite but busy, the kind of man who nodded hello while holding a work call to his ear. Ethan started mentioning Lena casually. She's funny. She gets what it's like to feel stuck. She has good instincts. It was nothing, just words. But words can be breadcrumbs if you know how to look. One Saturday morning, I was mowing the lawn, sweating through my shirt, and Ethan brought out lemonade, playing the role of supportive spouse, smiling like we were still that couple people envied. Lena was on her porch, waving. Ethan waved back, a beat too long, a smile too bright. I didn't see the danger in it then. I see it now. Betrayal doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives like a draft under a closed door. Soft, subtle, easy to ignore until you realize the whole room has gone cold. By the time I noticed my house didn't feel like home anymore, Ethan had already begun practicing the speech that would shatter it. And I, Kayla Wilcox, was still telling myself we were fine. The night Ethan told me he wanted a divorce didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. No dramatic buildup, no warning storm. It came quietly, like everything else he'd taken from me. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop balanced on my knees, half watching a rerun I'd already seen, half answering emails I didn't care about. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and reheated leftovers. Ordinary, safe, familiar. Ethan walked in and sat across from me instead of beside me. That alone made my stomach tighten. He folded his hands together, stared at the coffee table like it held answers, and took a deep breath. We need to talk. Those 4 words hit harder than any scream could have. I closed my laptop slowly. Okay. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, his expression was calm. Too calm. Polished. Like a performance he'd rehearsed in the mirror. I'm not happy, he said. I haven't been for a while. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. What do you mean? I feel stuck, Kayla. Trapped. Like my life is on pause and I'm suffocating. He rubbed his palms together. Our marriage. It's become a cage. A cage. I blinked. A cage. He nodded, earnest, convincing. I've grown as a person. You haven't grown with me. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just, we want different things now. I searched his face for something. Fear, guilt, doubt. I found none. So what are you saying? I asked quietly. He exhaled, like the hardest part was over. I think we should get a divorce. The word hung between us, thick and unreal. For a moment, my brain refused to cooperate. Divorce was a word other people used. Loud couples, messy couples, not us. I swallowed. Did I do something wrong? No, he said quickly, too quickly. This isn't about you. It's about me. I need space. I need freedom. I need to figure out who I am without being tied down. Freedom. I nodded slowly, trying to stay upright in a conversation that felt like gravity had been turned off. Is there someone else? He met my eyes without flinching. No, absolutely not. The certainty in his voice almost convinced me. Almost. I'm just bored, he added, with the routine, with the predictability. I want to try something new. Something new. The phrase lodged itself in my chest like a splinter. How long have you felt this way? I asked. Months, he said. I've been thinking about it for a long time. There it was, the crack. Thinking about it, I repeated. Thinking about it long enough to what? He hesitated, then said it. I've already talked to a lawyer. The room tilted. You already talked to a lawyer, I echoed. He nodded again. I wanted to be prepared. I didn't want this to turn ugly. Prepared. I felt cold all over. So, you planned this. I planned to be honest, he corrected. I planned to do this the right way. The right way, I said faintly, behind my back. He shifted in his seat. Kayla, don't do that. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I said. You did hurt me. He sighed, like I was missing the point. I think splitting everything 50-50 is fair. We built this life together. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. We built this life together? I repeated. Ethan, I paid for everything. The house, the bills, the groceries, your classes, your... And I supported you, he interrupted. I took care of the home. I was there emotionally. There it was, the entitlement. Calm, casual, absolute. I've already looked at apartments, he continued, as if we were discussing a grocery list. There's one I like, close to the city. I can move out soon. Soon. My marriage was ending, and he was already shopping for curtains. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I just sat there while he explained timelines and logistics like this was a business transaction. When he finally stood up, he didn't touch me, didn't hug me, didn't apologize. He went upstairs and closed the guest room door behind him. I stayed on that couch for hours. Something about his speech gnawed at me. The way it flowed too smoothly. The way every sentence sounded practiced. The way he used phrases like freedom and growth like shields. And that line, I want to try something new. Nobody says that unless something new already exists. I barely slept that weekend. We moved around each other like strangers. Polite, distant, careful. He stayed in the guest room. I stared at the ceiling. By Monday morning, my shock had hardened into something sharper. Suspicion. People don't wake up after 5 years of marriage and suddenly want out unless something pushes them. Something pulls harder than comfort. And I knew, deep down, in the place logic lives, that Ethan wasn't leaving toward nothing. He was leaving toward someone. I went to work and stared at my screen, unable to focus. Code blurred. Meetings passed without me hearing a word. My promotion, my salary, my carefully built stability, it all felt irrelevant. By lunchtime, my hands were shaking. So I did the thing I never thought I'd do. I started investigating. The first stop was our phone records. We were on a shared plan through my job. I had access to everything. Scrolling through the logs felt surreal. Dates, times, numbers. At first glance, nothing jumped out. Then I saw it. One number, over and over again. Texts every day. Calls stacked back to back. Late nights, early mornings. Thousands of interactions over 6 months. 6 months. My chest tightened. I ran the number through a reverse lookup site. It didn't give me a name, but it gave me a city. Our city. Local. Real. I moved on to the credit card statements. Ethan had his own card linked to my account. I'd never checked it before. Trust is expensive like that. Restaurants I'd never been to. Hotels. Hotels. In our city. During the day. On nights he'd said he was networking. My hands went numb. I needed proof, not theories, not feelings. Proof. That Tuesday night, Ethan said he was heading out. Workshop, he told me casually, grabbing his jacket. Working late, I said, matching his tone. I waited 10 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys and followed him. He didn't go anywhere near the city. He drove 20 minutes away and pulled into a quiet apartment complex I'd never seen before. I parked down the street, heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. I watched him check his hair in the mirror, watched him straighten his jacket, watched him walk up to a door and knock. The door opened, and there she was, Lena, our neighbor. She smiled like she'd been waiting all day. Ethan stepped inside. She kissed him, slow, deliberate, intimate, and closed the door behind them. I sat there in my car, staring at that door, feeling something inside me snap clean in half. My husband wasn't bored. He was cheating. And suddenly everything made sense. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. Because in that moment, shock turned into clarity. If Ethan thought he could destroy me quietly and walk away funded by my life, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I stayed in my car for a long time after that door closed. Not minutes, an hour. I watched the light flick on behind Lena's curtains. I watched silhouettes move past the window. I watched my hands on the steering wheel slowly stop shaking. Shock is loud at first, then it gets very, very quiet. That quiet is dangerous, because that's when your brain stops panicking and starts calculating. I didn't confront Ethan. I didn't storm up to the apartment. I didn't text him or call him or cry in the car like every movie tells you to. Because rushing in would have given him what he didn't deserve, a warning. Instead, I took out my phone and started documenting everything. Photos of his car, photos of the building, the unit number, the time, the date. I even recorded a short video, my voice calm as I whispered details into the microphone like I was filing a report. 3 hours later, Ethan walked out. His hair was slightly messy, his shirt wrinkled. He looked relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. I took more photos. Then I watched him drive away. I didn't follow him home. I sat there another 40 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, replaying every moment from the last 6 months. Every late night, every excuse, every time I'd swallowed doubt because it was easier than swallowing truth. When I finally drove home, the house was dark. Ethan was already in the guest room. The door was closed. I went straight to my home office and opened my laptop. I wasn't planning a divorce. I was planning my survival. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't recognize, calm, observant, detached. I smiled when Ethan spoke. I nodded when he talked about timelines and lawyers and doing this respectfully. All the while I was building a case. I installed a GPS tracker on his car. Yes, I checked. It was legally mine, paid for in full, registered in my name. What I saw made my stomach turn. He was with Lena 3 to 4 times a week, sometimes at her apartment, sometimes at hotels, cheap ones near the highway. Once he brought her to our house while I was working late. My bed. I took photos, videos, screenshots, timestamps. I felt like a stranger stalking my own marriage, but this wasn't obsession. It was documentation. This was insurance. The worst part wasn't the sex. It was the contempt. I heard that firsthand one evening, when everything aligned in the worst possible way. I came home early from work and decided to sit outside. It was warm, quiet, peaceful. I set my laptop on the patio table and answered emails. Ethan thought I was staying late. Lena didn't know I was home. Our backyards shared a fence. Their patio was maybe 20 feet from mine. I heard her laugh first. Then Ethan's voice. I froze. They were sitting outside, drinks in hand, visible through the gaps in the fence. Completely relaxed. Completely unaware. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I didn't have to move closer. I didn't have to eavesdrop. They were speaking freely, loudly, without a care in the world. And what I heard burned. Ethan laughed about how clueless I was, how predictable, how I'd probably roll over in the divorce just to avoid conflict. Lena joked about how easy it was to play the supportive wife while planning her exit, about how she couldn't wait to get paid and finally live the life she deserved. They talked about Europe, about moving in together, about using my money as a starting fund. She's probably at work right now, Ethan said, chuckling. Late as always. That's all she is. Work. I recorded for nearly an hour. When they finally went inside, I stayed there in the dark, replaying the audio through my headphones. Every insult, every laugh, every plan. By morning, my grief had hardened into resolve. I made an appointment with the best divorce attorney in the city, the kind people whispered about. Expensive, ruthless, effective. He reviewed my evidence in silence. Then he smiled. This, he said, tapping the folder, is a gift. He explained everything calmly. Adultery, misuse of marital funds, clear intent, audio proof. Let him think he's winning, my lawyer advised. Let him file first. Let him make demands. Then we strike. So that's exactly what I did. 2 weeks later, Ethan filed for divorce. He moved into Lena's apartment, and through his lawyer, he demanded half of everything: house, savings, retirement, stock options, plus spousal support. When my lawyer relayed the demands, I could hear the smile in his voice. "Oh," he said, "this is going to be fun." We countered with an offer that stripped Ethan down to 15% of liquid assets. No house, no retirement, no support. His lawyer exploded. Negotiations failed. We went to court, and while Ethan strutted around convinced he'd outsmarted me, I prepared something else. Because I wasn't the only spouse being betrayed. I had Lena's husband's contact information saved in a folder, and I was just waiting for the right moment to hit send. The week before court, I made my final move. I didn't tell my lawyer. I didn't tell anyone. I drove past Lena's apartment one evening, slow and deliberate, and there it was. Ethan's car, parked in its usual spot like it belonged there. Like he hadn't detonated a marriage to get it there. I took a photo. Then I opened a brand new email account and sent that photo to Mark, Lena's husband. No explanation, no name. Just one sentence. Thought you should know where your wife spends her evenings. I don't know if Mark saw it immediately. I don't know what conversation happened behind closed doors. What I do know is that when court day arrived, the timing was perfect. I wore a dark suit, tailored, sharp, professional. The kind of outfit that reminded me who I was before I became someone's safety net. My lawyer met me on the courthouse steps, gave me one instruction. Stay calm, let them talk. Ethan sat across the room looking confident. He dressed carefully, neutral colors, clean shave, the image of a man wronged by an emotionally distant wife. Lena wasn't there. I noticed that immediately. The judge, Ava Reynolds, scanned the files with the kind of expression that said she'd seen every trick before. Ethan's lawyer went first. They painted a story of sacrifice, of a husband who'd supported my demanding career, of a man who'd put his dreams on hold while I worked late nights and weekends, of emotional neglect, of loneliness. I listened quietly. Then my lawyer stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize anything. He laid out facts. My income, my financial contributions, the lack of Ethan's, the expenses I covered, the timelines. Then he introduced the evidence. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel charges, photos. Ethan's face drained of color. When the audio played, the courtroom went silent. His voice echoed, laughing, mocking, planning, talking about using my money, talking about how stupid I was. When it ended, Judge Reynolds looked at Ethan like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Ethan stood up before his lawyer could stop him. "Yes, I had an affair," he said, voice shaking, "because she wasn't there. She cared more about her job than her husband." His lawyer's face went pale. "I deserved happiness," Ethan continued, "and I deserve half of everything. I earned it." The judge didn't interrupt him. She waited until he was finished. Then she spoke. The ruling was devastating. 90% of marital assets awarded to me. No spousal support. No retirement. No house. Ethan received 10% of liquid assets. That was it. He shouted, accused me of manipulation, said I'd planned everything. Judge Reynolds calmly adjourned the court. I walked out lighter than I'd felt in years. That afternoon, I sent a second email to Mark. This one wasn't anonymous. I introduced myself, explained everything, attached every piece of evidence. He replied within an hour. He'd already filed for divorce. Unlike me, he had the advantage. Lena would get nothing. And just like that, the fantasy Ethan and Lena built collapsed under its own weight. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It unraveled slowly, messy, loud, and humiliating in ways no courtroom ruling could ever capture. Ethan moved in with Lena permanently after the divorce, convinced they were finally free. Free from consequences, free from accountability, free to start the life they'd been fantasizing about behind my back. Reality had other plans. Lena lost her house first. Mark didn't just file for divorce, he went nuclear. In our state, adultery mattered. Lena walked away with nothing but her personal belongings and a reputation that traveled faster than she ever did. Mark kept the house, the accounts, the life she'd assumed was hers. Ethan suddenly found himself sharing a one-bedroom apartment funded by a settlement that was evaporating by the week. Money stress turns romance into warfare. They fought constantly about rent, groceries, job prospects, whose fault everything was. Friends told me Ethan complained that Lena had changed, that she wasn't supportive anymore, that she was bitter. I almost laughed. Lena tried to go back to the life she'd abandoned. Classes, networking, opportunities. Doors closed. People talked. Turns out no one wants to work with the woman who helped blow up 2 marriages and tried to fund her new life with someone else's money. Within months, she was working retail, Long shifts, low pay, exhausted. Ethan fared no better. His dream finally demanded something real: discipline, humility, consistency. He didn't have it. He bounced between short-term jobs, burned bridges, borrowed money he couldn't repay. The man who once lectured me about freedom now lived trapped in the consequences of his own choices. 3 months later, they broke up. 6 months after that, Ethan was alone. Meanwhile, my life got quiet. Good quiet. I threw myself into work, not as an escape, but as a reclamation. I got promoted. Again. My income jumped so high, it made my old salary feel like a warm-up. I bought a new car, traveled, slept peacefully for the first time in years. I dated casually, carefully. I learned what it felt like to be with someone who didn't resent my success. About a year after the divorce, I ran into Ethan at a grocery store. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked worn, older, like life had been sanding him down without mercy. His clothes were cheap, his posture smaller, his eyes hollow. I was in a tailored coat, fresh from a meeting, basket full of things I wanted instead of things I needed. Our eyes met. He froze. "Kayla," he said softly. I nodded, nothing more. He grabbed my arm. "Please," he whispered. "Can we talk?" People stared. "I'm sorry," he said, voice breaking. "I ruined everything. I was stupid. I didn't know what I had." I looked at his hand on my arm. "You wanted something new," I said calmly. "This is it." Tears spilled. Begging followed. I walked away. The messages started after that. Late nights. Burner numbers. Apologies layered with desperation. He showed up at my house once, cried on my porch, left letters. I didn't respond. My lawyer sent a cease and desist. The messages stopped. Last I heard, Ethan was working 2 jobs, barely making rent, living with roommates who didn't know his past and wouldn't care if they did. And me? I sleep well. Betrayal didn't break me. It clarified me.